The city lights shimmered outside the tall glass windows of one of the most exclusive restaurants in town. The place was buzzing with chatter, laughter, and the soft clinking of fine china. Inside, Adrian Cole walked in, his confident stride turning heads as usual. Dressed in a perfectly tailored suit that screamed wealth, he looked every bit the billionaire he was known to be. On his arm was Evelyn Harper, a stunning woman who had recently become the center of his world. With her dazzling smile and designer gown, she fit right into this luxurious setting. Adrian had planned this evening carefully. It wasn't just another date. It was a step forward in their relationship. He wanted to show Evelyn how serious he was about her. As they entered the Eat restaurant, the maitre d' greeted them warmly, leading them to a private booth tucked away in a quiet corner. The table was adorned with fresh flowers, sparkling silverware, and a bottle of expensive champagne chilling in an ice bucket. Everything was perfect, or so it seemed. They settled into their seats, and for a moment, Adrian felt like things were finally falling into place. Evelyn leaned closer, her voice light and playful. "This place is amazing," she said, glancing around at the elegant decor. "I've heard celebrities come here all the time." Adrian chuckled, feeling proud of himself for choosing such a classy spot. But just as he picked up the menu to decide what to order, something caught his eye across the room. At first, he thought maybe it was his imagination playing tricks on him. But no, it was real. Standing near the bar, balancing a tray laden with drinks, was someone he never expected to see again, Claire, his ex-wife. His heart skipped a beat. What was she doing here? And why did she look different? Then it hit him, her belly. She was pregnant. Very pregnant. For a second, Adrian couldn't breathe. Memories flooded back, memories of arguments, tears, and the painful day they signed their divorce papers. Seeing her now, dressed in a simple black apron over a maternity dress, serving tables, felt surreal. How had life brought her to this point? Evelyn noticed Adrian's sudden change in demeanor. His grip on the menu tightened, and his expression turned distant. "Is everything okay?" she asked, tilting her head curiously. Adrian hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Should he tell her? Would she understand? Finally, he forced a small smile and said, "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking." But Evelyn wasn't convinced. Her sharp eyes followed his gaze, landing on Claire. "Do you know her?" she asked. Casually, though, there was a hint of suspicion in her tone. Adrian nodded slowly. "It's a complicated," he muttered, avoiding further explanation. He didn't want to ruin the evening by bringing up his past. Not tonight. Not when things were going so well with Evelyn. As if sensing his discomfort, Claire chose that exact moment to approach their table. Balancing her tray with practiced ease, she stopped beside them to refill their water glasses. Up close, Adrian could see the exhaustion etched on her face, but also a quiet strength. Despite everything, she still carried herself with dignity. For a brief second, their eyes met. Claire's widened slightly in surprise, but then she quickly masked her emotions behind a polite smile. To anyone else, she might have appeared calm and professional, but Adrian knew better. He saw the flicker of pain in her eyes before she turned away and continued with her work. Adrian sat frozen, unable to process what he'd just witnessed. Why hadn't she told him about the pregnancy? Had she even tried? And more importantly, why was she working as a waitress instead of reaching out to him for help? Questions swirled in his mind, each one heavier than the last. Evelyn cleared her throat, snapping him out of his thoughts. "You seem distracted," she remarked, raising an eyebrow. "Who is she, really?" Adrian sighed, knowing he couldn't dodge the question forever. Still, he wasn't ready to explain. Not yet. Not here. So he gave her a vague answer, hoping it would suffice for now. "Just someone from my past," he said quietly. Evelyn didn't push him, but Adrian could tell. She was intrigued and maybe even a little jealous. The tension between them grew thicker, hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. Meanwhile, Claire moved gracefully through the restaurant, attending to other customers as if nothing unusual had happened. But Adrian couldn't take his eyes off her. Every step she took reminded him of the life they once shared, the dreams they'd built together and the promises they'd broken. Guilt gnawed at him, eating away at the happiness he'd felt just moments ago. What was he supposed to do now? Ignore the situation and pretend nothing was wrong? Or confront Claire and risk stirring up old wounds? Either way, Adrian knew one thing for sure. This night was far from over, and neither was the story of his complicated past. Adrian couldn't shake off the image of Claire from his mind. Even as Evelyn tried to engage him in conversation, his thoughts kept drifting back to the woman he once called his wife. He remembered the early days when they were struggling together, before he became a billionaire, before the fame and fortune changed everything. Back then, Claire was his rock. She worked odd jobs while he chased his dreams, supporting them both on a shoestring budget. They dreamed of a future where they wouldn't have to worry about money, where they could live comfortably and build a family. But somewhere along the way, things fell apart. Success brought distance between them. Adrian got consumed by work, spending long hours at the office or traveling for business deals. Meanwhile, Claire felt neglected, like she was losing the man she married. Their arguments grew more frequent, sharper, until one day, they decided it was better to part ways. The divorce was messy, filled with accusations and hurtful words neither of them truly meant. But pride stood in the way of reconciliation, and they went their separate ways. Now, sitting in this fancy restaurant, watching Claire serve tables while carrying his child, Adrian felt the weight of regret pressing down on him. How had it come to this? Why hadn't she reached out to him? Did she think he wouldn't care? Or worse, did she believe he'd abandoned her completely? Evelyn's voice broke through his thoughts. "You're not even listening to me," she said, frustration creeping into her tone. Adrian blinked, snapping back to reality. "I'm sorry," he murmured, avoiding her gaze. "I've got a lot on my mind." She leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. "Look, I don't know what's going on with you, but if there's something you need to say, just say it. Keeping secrets isn't healthy for either of us." Her words struck a chord. Evelyn deserved honesty, but how could he explain without making things worse? Telling her about Claire and the baby would complicate their relationship, yet staying silent felt wrong too. Adrian sighed deeply, torn between two worlds, the life he was building with Evelyn and the unresolved chapter with Claire. As dinner progressed, Adrian found himself glancing toward Claire repeatedly. Each time he caught glimpses of her moving gracefully between tables, smiling politely despite the obvious strain of carrying a heavy tray and an even heavier belly. Her movements were slow and deliberate, as though every step required effort. It pained him to see her like this. This wasn't the life she deserved, not after everything she'd done for him. Finally, unable to sit still any longer, Adrian excused himself under the pretense of needing fresh air. In truth, he headed straight to the manager's office. After explaining who he was and insisting it was urgent, he managed to arrange a brief meeting with Claire during her break. When she arrived, looking both surprised and wary, Adrian gestured for her to sit down. "What do you want?" Claire asked bluntly, crossing her arms protectively over her stomach. Her voice carried a mix of anger and exhaustion, but beneath it Adrian detected a hint of vulnerability. He hesitated, unsure of where to start. "Claire, I didn't expect to see you here tonight," he began awkwardly. "How are you holding up?" She gave him a sharp look. "Really? You show up out of nowhere after 2 years and ask how I'm doing? That's rich, coming from you." Adrian winced. He deserved that. "I know I messed up," he admitted quietly. "But seeing you here, working like this, pregnant, I can't help but feel responsible. Why didn't you tell me about the baby?" Claire's jaw tightened. "Because we're not together anymore, remember? You made it very clear that you didn't want anything to do with me. Besides, why would I bother telling you? You've moved on, haven't you? You've got your glamorous new girlfriend and your perfect little life." Her words stung, but Adrian knew she had every right to be angry. "That's not fair," he protested. Just because we're not together doesn't mean I wouldn't have cared. Is the baby mine? For a moment, Claire didn't answer. Then reluctantly she nodded. Yes, she whispered, barely audible. It's yours. A wave of emotions crashed over Adrian. Guilt, relief, fear, and something else he couldn't quite name. He wanted to reach out to comfort her, but he knew he didn't deserve that privilege. Instead, he swallowed hard and said, Claire, let me help you. You shouldn't be working like this, especially not in your condition. Her eyes flashed with defiance. I don't need your pity, Adrian, and I certainly don't need your money. I've been managing just fine on my own. Managing? Fine? He echoed incredulously. You're serving tables at a high-end restaurant while 8 months pregnant. That's not managing fine. That's exhausting yourself for no reason. It's called surviving, she shot back. Some of us don't have the luxury of walking away from problems or throwing money at them. Not everyone gets to live in your perfect little bubble. Her words hit home, leaving Adrian speechless. He realized how much privilege blinded him to the struggles others faced. For years, he'd taken his success for granted, assuming everyone else could navigate life's challenges as easily as he did. But Claire's situation was a harsh reminder that not everyone had the same opportunities or safety nets. I'm sorry, he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. I should have been there for you. I should have fought harder for us back then, but I'm here now and I want to make things right. For you and for our baby. Claire looked at him skeptically, tears welling up in her eyes. Why now? She asked softly. After all this time, why are you suddenly interested? Adrian hesitated, searching for the right words. Because I never stopped caring about you, he confessed. And because this baby deserves a father who's present. I don't want to repeat the mistakes I made with you. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken feelings and unresolved pain. Finally, Claire shook her head. I don't know if I can trust you again, she admitted. You disappeared from my life without a second thought. How do I know you won't do it again? Adrian felt a pang of guilt. He couldn't blame her for doubting him. He'd given her every reason to. You're right, he acknowledged. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight. All I'm asking is for a chance to prove that I've changed, to show you that I'm serious about being part of this baby's life. Claire studied him carefully, weighing his words. Part of her wanted to believe him, to give him another chance. But another part, the part scarred by betrayal, was afraid of getting hurt again. Give me time, she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. That's all I can promise right now. Adrian nodded, understanding that rebuilding trust would take patience and effort. Okay, he agreed. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. As Claire stood up to leave, Adrian watched her walk away, feeling a mix of hope and uncertainty. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in years he felt determined to make amends, for Claire, for their unborn child, and for himself. Adrian returned to the table, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. He tried to act normal, but it was impossible. The conversation with Claire replayed in his head like a broken record. Her words, sharp, bitter, yet laced with pain, stung him, more than he cared to admit. He felt a mix of guilt and helplessness, knowing he couldn't undo the past but desperate to fix the present. Evelyn noticed the shift in his demeanor immediately. Gone was the charming, confident man who had walked into the restaurant earlier that evening. In his place sat someone visibly shaken, distracted, and distant. She leaned back in her chair, studying him with narrowed eyes. You're hiding something, she said bluntly, her tone sharper than before. Who is she really? And why does she matter so much to you? Adrian hesitated. He knew there was no point in lying anymore. Not after everything that had happened tonight. Taking a deep breath, he decided to come clean. She's my ex-wife, he admitted, his voice low and heavy. Evelyn's expression froze for a moment, then shifted into disbelief. Your ex-wife? She repeated as if trying to process the information. What do you mean? You never mentioned being married before. I didn't think it mattered, Adrian replied weakly. We divorced 2 years ago. It was messy, painful. I guess I just wanted to leave that part of my life behind. Evelyn wasn't satisfied. And now? Why are you suddenly so interested in her again? Is this about guilt, or is there something else? Adrian sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's not just guilt. She's pregnant, Evelyn, and the baby. It's mine. The room seemed to grow quieter, even though the restaurant buzzed around them. Evelyn stared at him, her jaw tightening as she absorbed the news. For a few seconds she didn't say anything. Then slowly she leaned forward, her voice icy. Let me get this straight. Your ex-wife is having your baby, and you're only telling me about it now? After we've been dating for months? It's not like that, Adrian protested quickly. I didn't know about the pregnancy until tonight. Seeing her here, working as a waitress while carrying our child, it hit me hard. I realized I can't ignore this, not again. Evelyn's face hardened. So what does this mean for us? For our relationship? Are you saying you want to go back to her? No, Adrian said firmly, though his voice wavered slightly. I care about you, Evelyn. But I also have responsibilities to my child and maybe even to Claire. I can't turn my back on them. Evelyn stood abruptly, grabbing her purse from the table. Her movements were sharp, almost angry. You're unbelievable, she spat. Do you even hear yourself right now? You're sitting here talking about responsibility, but what about the promises you made to me? What about the future we were supposed to build together? Adrian reached out instinctively, trying to calm her down. Evelyn, please, let's talk about this. We can figure it out. There's nothing to figure out, she snapped, pulling her hand away. You've already made your choice, Adrian. Maybe you don't see it yet, but you have. And honestly, I don't think there's room for me in whatever mess you're stepping back into. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Adrian alone at the table. He watched her disappear into the crowd, his heart sinking with every step she took. Part of him wanted to chase after her, to explain, to beg her to stay. But another part of him, a deeper, quieter part, knew she was right. This situation was complicated, messy, and painful. There was no easy way out. As the reality of what had just happened sank in, Adrian felt a strange mix of relief and regret. Relief because he finally told the truth, both to himself and to Evelyn. Regret because he'd hurt someone he genuinely cared about. He sat there for a long time, staring at the half-empty champagne glass in front of him, wondering how his life had become so tangled. Eventually, he signaled for the check. As the waiter approached, Adrian glanced toward the bar where Claire had been working earlier. She was gone now, probably back to serving tables or taking a break somewhere. He wondered what she was thinking, whether she believed him when he said he wanted to make things right. Did she trust him enough to let him try? Paying the bill, Adrian left the restaurant, stepping out into the cool night air. The streets were alive with lights and sounds, but he barely noticed. His mind was elsewhere, replaying the events of the evening over and over again. He thought about Claire, the tired look in her eyes, the way she carried herself despite everything she was going through. He thought about Evelyn's anger, her disappointment, and the finality in her voice when she walked away. Most of all, he thought about the baby, a new life that would soon enter the world, connecting him to Claire in ways he couldn't escape. Walking aimlessly through the city, Adrian found himself standing outside Claire's apartment building. He didn't plan to come here. His feet had simply led him. For a moment he hesitated, unsure of what to do next. Should he knock on her door, apologize again, offer his support? Or would she turn him away, unwilling to forgive him for abandoning her once already? Taking a deep breath, Adrian made up his mind. Whether Claire accepted him or not, he owed it to her, and to their unborn child, to try. With determination in his heart, he stepped inside the building, ready to face whatever came next. Adrian stood outside Claire's apartment door, his heart pounding in his chest. He wasn't sure what to expect when she opened it, or if she'd even open it at all. After everything that had happened between them, he wouldn't blame her for slamming the door in his face. But he couldn't walk away, not now. This was too important. He knocked gently, the sound echoing softly through the quiet hallway. For a moment, there was no response. Then he heard footsteps approaching from the other side. The door creaked open slightly, revealing Claire standing there with a cautious look on her face. Her hair was pulled back into a loose bun, and she wore a simple sweater draped over her maternity dress. Despite her tired appearance, she still carried an air of quiet strength that Adrian admired and regretted pushing away. "What are you doing here?" she asked bluntly, keeping the chain lock securely fastened. Her tone was guarded, but Adrian could hear a flicker of curiosity beneath it. "I needed to talk to you," he said earnestly, meeting her gaze. "Can I come in?" Claire hesitated, clearly debating whether to let him inside. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she sighed and closed the door briefly to remove the chain. When she reopened it, she stepped aside to allow him entry, though her body language made it clear she wasn't entirely comfortable with his presence. The apartment was small but cozy, filled with warm lighting and personal touches, a stark contrast to the cold, sterile luxury Adrian was used to. A stack of baby books sat on the coffee table next to a half-knitted blanket. It was evident that Claire had been preparing for their child even without his help. "Make it quick," she said as she gestured toward the couch. "I'm tired." Adrian nodded, taking a seat while she settled into a nearby armchair. She crossed her arms protectively over her belly, watching him closely. There was no warmth in her expression, only skepticism and a hint of wariness. "I know you don't trust me," Adrian began, choosing his words carefully. "And honestly, I don't blame you. I've made so many mistakes I'll probably regret for the rest of my life, but tonight, seeing you at the restaurant working so hard while carrying our baby, it woke me up. I realized I can't keep running from this. I can't keep pretending like none of it matters." Claire raised an eyebrow, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "Oh, really? Because that's exactly what you've been doing for the past 2 years. You disappeared, Adrian. Not a phone call, not a text, nothing. And now you show up out of nowhere acting like you suddenly care?" Her words hit him like a punch to the gut, but he knew she was right. "You're absolutely right," he admitted. "I messed up. I should have reached out, should have stayed involved, should have done something. But I didn't, and I can't change that. All I can do is try to make things better moving forward." She studied him silently, searching for any sign of insincerity. After a long pause, she asked, "Why now? What changed?" Adrian took a deep breath, looking down at his hands before meeting her eyes again. "Because I saw you tonight. Really, saw you. And I realized how much I've taken for granted. All the sacrifices you made for us when we were together. All the times you stood by me when I couldn't stand on my own. I failed you, Claire. I failed both of us, but I don't want to fail our child." His honesty seemed to soften her just a little, though she remained cautious. "So what are you saying? That you want to swoop in and play daddy now? After all, this time? No," he replied quickly. "It's not about swooping in. I know I can't erase the past or pretend like everything is okay, but I want to be part of this baby's life. For real this time. And if you'll let me, I want to help you too. You shouldn't have to do this alone." Claire looked away, her jaw tightening. He could tell she was struggling, with anger, with hurt, maybe even with hope. "Help me how?" she asked finally, her voice quieter now. "Whatever you need," Adrian said sincerely. "Financial support, medical bills, childcare, anything. I'll take care of it. And I'll be there for doctor's appointments, for late-night feedings, for everything. No excuses. No disappearing acts." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken emotions. Finally, Claire let out a shaky sigh. "You say all these things now, but how do I know you mean them? How do I know you won't leave again when things get tough?" Adrian leaned forward, his expression earnest. "You don't. Not yet. And I understand that. Trust isn't something I can demand, it's something I have to earn. All I'm asking for is a chance to prove that I've changed, to show you that I'm serious about being here for you and our baby." Claire considered his words, her eyes glistening with tears she refused to shed. Part of her wanted to believe him, to give him another chance, but another part, the part scarred by betrayal, was afraid of getting hurt again. "I don't know if I can trust you," she whispered. "But maybe I can try. Just don't make me regret it." Relief washed over Adrian, though he knew this was only the beginning. Earning her trust would take time, patience, and consistency. But for the first time in years, he felt like he was on the right path. "Thank you," he said softly. "You won't regret this. I promise." They spent the next hour talking about practical matters like finances and living arrangements, but also about the future. Claire still held back emotionally, keeping a safe distance, but Adrian could sense a tiny crack in the wall she'd built around herself. It was enough to give him hope. As the night wore on, Claire eventually excused, herself citing exhaustion. Adrian understood. Pregnancy wasn't easy, especially under stressful circumstances. Before leaving, he handed her his card. "Call me anytime," he said gently. "Day or night. Whatever you need, I'm here." She nodded, though her expression remained neutral. "We'll see," she replied simply. Walking home that night, Adrian felt a strange mix of emotions: hope, determination, and a lingering sadness for all the time they'd lost. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to face it. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was fighting for something that truly mattered. Adrian kept his promise. Over the next few weeks, he made it a point to be present in Claire's life, not just with words, but with actions. He started small, helping her with everyday tasks that had become difficult given her pregnancy. Whether it was grocery shopping, arranging furniture in the nursery, or simply sitting with her during doctor's appointments, Adrian showed up consistently. At first, Claire remained guarded, keeping him at arm's length emotionally. But as time went on, she began to soften, allowing herself to trust him bit by bit. Their interactions were often quiet and awkward at first. Conversations revolved around practical matters: baby names, feeding schedules, hospital paperwork. But slowly, they found themselves reminiscing about old memories too. Sometimes laughter would bubble up unexpectedly, breaking through the tension between them. Other times, silence spoke louder than words, filled with unspoken apologies and shared pain. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. One evening, after a particularly long day of errands, Adrian offered to cook dinner for Claire. She hesitated, clearly surprised by the gesture. "You don't have to do this," she said, leaning against the kitchen counter. Her swollen belly pressed against the edge, making it hard for her to stand comfortably for too long. "I know I don't have to," Adrian replied, pulling ingredients out of the fridge. "But I want to. Besides, you've been doing everything yourself for months now. Let me take care of something for once." Claire watched him skeptically as he chopped vegetables and stirred a pot on the stove. Though his cooking skills weren't exactly refined, the effort touched her more than she cared to admit. When dinner was ready, a simple pasta dish with garlic bread, they sat down together at her tiny dining table. "This is nice," Claire admitted reluctantly, taking a bite. "Thank you." Adrian smiled faintly. "You're welcome, and thank you for letting me help. It means a lot." As they ate, the conversation turned serious. Claire looked at him thoughtfully, her expression softening slightly. "Why are you really doing all this?" she asked suddenly. "Is it guilt? Obligation?" Adrian set his fork down, meeting her gaze directly. "It's not just guilt," he said honestly. "Yes, I feel guilty for walking away from you when you needed me most, but it's more than that. I realize now how much I lost when we split up, and not just because of the baby. You were my partner, my best friend. I miss that. I miss us." His confession caught Claire off guard. For a moment, she didn't respond, staring at her plate instead. Finally, she sighed. "I miss us too," she admitted quietly. "But things can't go back to the way they were, Adrian. Too much has happened." "I'm not asking for that," he said quickly. "I'm not trying to rewrite history or pretend like none of it ever happened. All I want is to move forward, to build something new, something better, for our child and maybe even for ourselves." Claire nodded slowly, though doubt still lingered in her eyes. "We'll see," she murmured. "One step at a time." Meanwhile, Evelyn had moved on, or so it seemed. After their explosive argument at the restaurant, she stopped answering Adrian's calls and texts. Initially, he tried reaching out multiple times, hoping to explain himself and salvage what was left of their relationship. But eventually, he realized it was futile. Evelyn deserved someone who could give her their full attention, and right now, Adrian couldn't be that person. His focus was elsewhere, with Claire and their unborn baby. A few weeks later, Adrian saw Evelyn at a charity gala. She looked stunning as always, wearing an elegant gown and exuding confidence. On her arm was another man, someone Adrian recognized vaguely from social circles. They exchanged polite nods, but there was no warmth in Evelyn's smile when she acknowledged him. After the event, tabloids buzzed with news of Evelyn's new engagement. Photos of her and her fiancé splashed across magazines, accompanied by headlines about love conquering all. Adrian felt a pang of regret, but knew deep down that he'd made the right choice. His priorities had shifted, and there was no turning back now. As Claire's due date approached, Adrian became increasingly involved in preparing for the baby's arrival. He helped set up the crib, organized diaper supplies, and attended birthing classes alongside her. Though Claire still maintained some emotional distance, she couldn't deny the effort Adrian was putting into being present. Each milestone they reached together brought them closer, knitting fragile threads of trust between them. One night, as they sat side by side on the couch flipping through parenting books, Claire turned to Adrian with a hesitant smile. "Do you think we'll actually make this work?" she asked softly. "Us raising a child together?" Adrian met her gaze, his expression unwavering. "I don't know," he admitted. "But I'm willing to try, aren't you?" She nodded slowly, her smile widening just a fraction. Yeah, I am." In that moment, surrounded by the hum of the city outside and the quiet comfort of each other's company, they both felt a flicker of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, it never was, but they were ready to face it together. One step at a time. The day finally arrived. Claire woke up in the middle of the night, clutching her belly as sharp pains shot through her body. It was time. The baby was coming. Panic mixed with excitement as she fumbled for her phone to call Adrian. He answered. On the first ring, his voice groggy but instantly alert when he heard her speak. "I think it's happening," she said, trying to stay calm despite the intensity of the contractions. "The baby's coming." Adrian didn't waste a second. "I'm on my way," he assured her. "Just breathe, okay? I'll be there soon." True to his word, Adrian arrived within minutes, rushing into her apartment with a bag he'd packed weeks ago, just in case. Together they headed to the hospital, navigating the quiet streets of the early morning. The ride was tense but filled with quiet support. Adrian held Claire's hand tightly, offering words of encouragement as she braced herself for each wave of pain. At the hospital, things moved quickly. Nurses guided them through check-ins and prepped Claire for delivery while Adrian stayed glued to her side. For hours they endured the ups and downs of labor together, Claire pushing through the exhaustion, Adrian holding her hand and wiping sweat from her forehead. There were moments of frustration, tears, and even laughter when a particularly bad contraction made Claire threaten to throw something at Adrian if he told her to breathe one more time. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the room erupted in the sound of a newborn's cry. A nurse gently placed the tiny bundle into Claire's arms, wrapping the baby snugly in a soft blanket. Both parents stared in awe at the little miracle they had created. The baby, a boy, was perfect, with delicate features and a shock of dark hair that reminded Adrian of Claire. "You did amazing," Adrian whispered, his voice thick with emotion as he looked down at his son. Tears streamed down his face, unbidden but impossible to hold back. This moment, seeing his child for the first time, felt surreal, overwhelming, and deeply humbling all at once. Claire smiled weakly, cradling the baby close to her chest. "We did it," she murmured, her own eyes glistening with tears. Together. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply sat there, basking in the weight of what they had just experienced. Despite everything they'd been through, the arguments, the divorce, the years apart, this moment felt like a fresh start, a new chapter not just for their family, but for themselves. In the days that followed, Adrian became a constant presence at the hospital. He visited every chance he got, bringing snacks, books, and flowers to brighten Claire's recovery room. When she was discharged, he insisted on helping her settle back home, rearranging furniture and stocking the kitchen so she wouldn't have to lift a finger. His dedication didn't go unnoticed. Though Claire still carried some lingering doubts about their future, she couldn't deny how much Adrian had changed. One evening, as they sat together in the living room feeding the baby, Claire broke the comfortable silence. "Thank you," she said softly, glancing at him over the top of the baby's head. "For everything. I wasn't sure you'd stick around, but here you are." Adrian smiled, setting aside the bottle he'd been using, to burp the baby. "Of course I'm here," he replied earnestly. "This is where I belong, with you and our son. I know I can't erase the past or make up for all the times I let you down, but I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I've changed." Claire studied him carefully, searching his expression for any hint of insincerity, but all she saw was honesty, raw, unfiltered, and genuine. Slowly, she nodded. "Okay," she said quietly. "Let's see where this goes, together." Her words sent a wave of relief through Adrian. He reached out, placing a gentle hand on hers. "Together," he echoed. As weeks turned into months, their bond grew stronger. Raising a newborn wasn't easy. It came with sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and countless challenges, but they faced it all as a team. Adrian learned how to soothe the baby during late-night feedings, while Claire taught him the art of swaddling without waking the little one. They argued occasionally, as any couple would, but their disagreements never escalated into the bitter fights of their past. Instead, they talked things through, finding compromises and solutions rather than dwelling on blame. Their relationship evolved naturally, built on mutual respect and shared responsibility. Though they weren't ready to redefine their romantic connection, they found joy in rediscovering each other as partners. Simple moments, like laughing over the baby's first attempts at rolling over or celebrating milestones like his first smile, reminded them of why they had fallen in love in the first place. Even Evelyn crossed Adrian's mind occasionally, but the pang of regret he once felt had faded. Seeing photos of her happy with her fiancé brought him peace, knowing he'd made the right decision by stepping aside. Her happiness mattered to him, just as Claire's, and now their son's did. On a crisp autumn morning, Adrian stood outside Claire's apartment building with a bouquet of flowers in one hand and a nervous smile on his face. Today marked 6 months since their son's birth, and Adrian had planned something special. As Claire opened the door, holding their giggling baby in her arms, Adrian took a deep breath. "Can we talk?" he asked, gesturing toward the park across the street. She nodded, curious but intrigued. They strolled together, the baby nestled securely in his stroller. Leaves crunched underfoot as golden sunlight filtered through the trees. When they reached a quiet bench overlooking the playground, Adrian stopped and turned to Claire. "I've been thinking a lot lately," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion, "about us, about everything we've been through. And I realize something. I don't want to keep looking back at what went wrong. I want to focus on what's ahead, on building something beautiful, for our son, and for us." He paused, pulling a small box from his pocket. Inside was a simple silver keychain engraved with 3 words, Together forever starts now. This isn't a proposal, he clarified quickly, sensing her surprise. Not yet, anyway. But I want you to know that I'm committed. To you, to our family, to making things work no matter what it takes. Let's take this step together, one day at a time. Tears welled up in Claire's eyes as she accepted the gift, clutching it tightly in her hand. Okay, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Let's do it. Together. And, as they sat there watching their son coo happily in his stroller, they knew they were ready to embrace whatever the future held. One step at a time. A new chapter. Months passed and life began to settle into a rhythm for Adrian, Claire, and their son. The early days of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes gradually gave way to a sense of routine, a fragile but growing stability that brought them closer as a family. Their bond deepened with each passing day, built not just on shared responsibilities, but also on moments of laughter, patience, and quiet understanding. Adrian threw himself into fatherhood with an enthusiasm that surprised even him. He learned how to change diapers without gagging, mastered the art of soothing midnight cries, and discovered the joy of watching his son's face light up at the sight of a colorful rattle. Every milestone, the first smile, the first laugh, the first attempt at rolling over, felt monumental, filling him with pride and gratitude. For someone who had once been so consumed by work and ambition, these small victories reminded him of what truly mattered in life. Claire noticed the change in him too. Gone was the distant, career-obsessed man she had married years ago. In his place stood someone attentive, patient, and present. Though she still carried some lingering doubts about their future, she couldn't deny the effort Adrian was putting into being there, for her and for their child. His actions spoke louder than any apology ever could. One sunny afternoon, they sat together in the park watching their son play with a stuffed toy. Claire turned to Adrian with a thoughtful expression. Do you ever think about where we'd be if things hadn't worked out like this? She asked hesitantly. Adrian paused, considering her question. All the time, he admitted. But honestly, I don't want to dwell on what matters is that we're here now and we're doing okay. Better than okay, actually, she smiled faintly, glancing down at their giggling baby. Yeah, we are. Their conversation shifted to lighter topics, plans for the weekend, ideas for decorating the nursery, and whether their son would inherit Adrian's stubborn streak or Claire's quick wit. It was a reminder of how far they'd come since those tense, uncertain days when Adrian first walked back into her life. Back then, trust had felt like an impossible mountain to climb. Now it felt like solid ground beneath their feet. As their son grew older, Adrian and Claire found themselves navigating new challenges together. Toddler tantrums tested their patience, while teething nights left them both exhausted. But they faced it all as a team, leaning on each other when things got tough. Adrian often joked that parenting was harder than running a billion-dollar company, but there was truth in his words. Raising a child required teamwork, sacrifice, and unconditional love. Qualities they were learning to embrace more fully every day. One evening, after putting their son to bed, Adrian and Claire sat side by side on the couch, sipping cups of chamomile tea. The house was quiet except for the soft hum of a fan in the corner. Adrian set his cup down and looked at Claire, his expression serious yet tender. I've been thinking about something, he said slowly, choosing his words carefully. About us. Claire raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What about us? He took a deep breath, gathering his thoughts. We've come a long way since everything fell apart between us. And I know we've been taking things slow, focusing on raising our son and rebuilding trust. But I can't help wondering, where does this leave us? Are we just co-parents now? Or is there room for something more? Claire didn't respond immediately. She stared into her tea, her mind racing with conflicting emotions. Part of her wanted to leap at the chance to rekindle what they once had, to give their relationship another shot. But another part, the cautious, guarded part, was afraid of getting hurt again, Trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt overnight, no matter how hard Adrian tried. I don't know, she admitted finally, her voice soft but honest. I care about you, Adrian. More than I thought I would after everything that happened. But I'm scared too. Scared that we'll slip back into old patterns. Scared that one day you'll wake up and realize you miss your old life. The freedom, the excitement. Adrian nodded, understanding her fears. I get it, he said gently. And I won't lie. It hasn't always been easy adjusting to this new life. There are days when I miss the simplicity of my old routines, but none of that compares to what I have now, with you and our son. You've taught me what it means to truly live, Claire. To prioritize love over ambition, connection over success. His words struck a chord deep within her. She had spent so many years resenting him for leaving, for choosing his career over their marriage. Yet here he was, laying his heart bare, showing her that he had changed, not because he felt obligated, but because he genuinely cared. Promise me something, she said after a long pause. Promise me that no matter what happens, you'll keep showing up. Not just for our son, but for me too, because I need to know I can count on you. Adrian reached for her hand, holding it firmly in his own. I promise, he said, his voice unwavering. Every single day I'll show up for both of you. No excuses, no disappearing acts. Just me, trying my best to be the man you deserve. Tears welled up in Claire's eyes, but this time they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of hope. Hope for a future where forgiveness outweighed resentment, where love conquered fear. Slowly she leaned forward, resting her head against his shoulder. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe that, maybe, just maybe, they could make it work. The months that followed brought a renewed sense of purpose to their relationship. Adrian continued to prove himself through consistent actions, never wavering in his commitment to Claire and their son. They celebrated milestones together, first steps, first words, birthdays, and found joy in the everyday moments that made life beautiful. One crisp winter morning, as snow blanketed the city streets, Adrian bundled up their son in a cozy jacket and took him outside to build a snowman. Claire watched from the window, smiling at the sight of her two favorite people, laughing and playing together. It was a picture-perfect moment, one she never imagined possible during the darkest days of their separation. Later that evening, as they tucked their son into bed and turned off the lights, Adrian pulled Claire close, wrapping his arms around her. Thank you, he whispered, his breath warm against her ear. For giving me another chance, for trusting me again. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Thank you for proving me wrong, she replied softly. For showing me that some things are worth fighting for. As they stood there, wrapped in each other's embrace, they knew the road ahead wouldn't always be smooth. Life rarely was. But they also knew they had everything. They needed to face whatever came their way, together, one step at a time.